Welcome to Brand on the Rocks. I'm Ryan Holck, and for the last 20 years, I've been helping businesses and brands to distill their story because most brands struggle to tell it well. If you've been watching for a while, I usually have three different kinds of episodes. There's straight up episodes that are just me. There's shared pour episodes that have conversations between myself and others. There are on the rocks episodes where I do real world reviews and look at what is and isn't working in different brands and their marketing packages, how they're talking about what they do. But today's going to be a little shift from that. I recently was at the Thing Orlando, which is a conference for entrepreneurs, and gave a workshop there talking about how you can get clarity around some of the stories that you tell in your business. So this is actually going to be a live workshop session that was recorded at the event that I helped facilitate. So you're going to hear me, you're going to hear some audience members, and they're going to walk through a couple things. I will put links to some of the resources at the end in the show notes, and I hope you enjoy. Welcome that distills bold ideas into clear messages you can actually use. Each week, we serve up conversations, audits, and straight pours of insight to help you cut through the noise and grow your business. Hosted by brand strategist Ryan Holck, this is where clarity comes neat and your brand gets remembered. My goal here is that in the next probably 45-ish minutes, we're going to work on some clarity on some specific things within your business. This is not going to be a creative session. It's going to be a clarity building session. And so I am curious, how many of you grew up in families that camped? Anybody? Okay. When you camped, what kind of things happened while you were camping?
S'mores and hot dogs.
Lots of s'mores and hot dogs. Awesome. Campfires?
You go to shower.
Yes. In a shower that never really got hot. Yes. Okay. Anybody else? Sweeping the tent.
Kept that thing as clean as our living room floor.
Yes. Totally and completely. Anybody else? I'm sorry? You rode your bikes, went fishing. So our family, when we were young, like my brother and I were 2 years apart, we had two other families that we camped with. And we were all the families had boys that were within like 4 or 5 years of each other. And so when we would go camping was all about the food and it was all about the fishing and the hiking and the BB guns. And you have any idea how much bacon a 10-year-old can eat? It's a whole lot. And we found out one day while we were camping, the parents were like, hey, we leave tomorrow, use up the bacon. 5 pounds of bacon started, 1 pound made it to the table. We blew through that bacon. And it was, for us, camping was one of those moments that had a lot of memories to it. And partly it was because my dad grew up in a family that had that giant tent that you were always sweeping out. It was an army tent, like Korean War army tent. And we spent a lot of time around the campfire hearing stories and telling stories that my girls now call the lore of the family. I call them tribal stories. They're the stories that my dad was is an amazing storyteller. Spent years studying story, spent time with Pixar people, like what does it take to tell a good story? And when he would tell a story, everyone around the campfire was engaged. And it was the first opportunity for me, and I didn't realize the power of it at the moment, but the opportunity for me to realize how important stories are and how memorable they make our experiences and us. And as I've gotten into business and begun to serve clients through that needed marketing tasks, I realized that the recurring challenge that they had was the inability to tell their story and their business story in a compelling way that kept people listening. The thing that around the campfire worked so well that drew you in didn't happen in a lot of our business conversations. And I realized there were some principles there that we could take away. And if we applied them really well in our businesses, then we would actually thrive and people would get us. They'd remember us. It would make them want to refer us because they didn't have to think, who is that person I met 3 weeks ago? They're like, I remember a story. That was this person. You need to call Joey for that. You need to call Roger for that. You need to call Caleb for that. It was those kind of stories. And so stories really, in my opinion, are what can be the thread that makes our marketing work for us. So my question is, I'm curious, what do you sell? Caleb, what do you sell? Either in your day job or in your networking thing. Like, what do you sell?
Myself.
Okay. And why should I go with you?
Not
Joey,
very compelling, but
no? Joey, what do you sell?
I like to think that I don't know how to put this, but I sell people's time back to them. Like anybody can book a vacation, but not everyone can. So booking and planning a vacation are two different things. So I like to think I give people time back in their lives because people are busy. They don't have time to carve out the amount of time that you need to plan a good vacation.
Okay. And why should I go with you?
To have the experience and the professional connections that they don't.
Okay. Sheree, what do you sell? Okay. And why should I go with you?
Because I will help you reach your goals
Rebecca, what do you sell?
by saying operations and CRM systems. But the better answer would be giving people back the space to be in their superpower.
Okay. And why should I go with you?
My approach to that is very out of the box and personalized.
So each of those answers, while true, for the most part, really is full of information and not a memorable nugget. Something that the person we're talking to is going to hear and go, right. Unless that happens to be the person you walked into at a networking meeting who needed to hear those very words you just said, which, unless you're going to different networking meetings, is not always how it works. It happens in conversation. It happens in those memorable moments. Some of the things Caleb shared about, how do you make sure the person remembers who you are? How do you walk in? And so the question then is, or the issue is that information is not enough. It's not enough to just know what we sell and why people should buy from us. It's that we have to be able to connect it to a larger story. I have a client. They were a client 5-6 years ago, consulting client, came to me and said, hey, we're starting a foundation. Part of it's nonprofit, part of it's for profit, but we need some help building a strategy. We need a strategy for how we're going to talk to people who are supporting the nonprofit, people who are spending money with us, and community members so they actually know who we are. So we built out a strategy, built out some things, and we passed it on to a PR team. And the last 3 years, the PR team has run with it. One problem. The PR team lost the narrative. They lost the story. It became about the information that needed to be conveyed, not the heart and the passion that made people emotionally connect with it. And all of a sudden, 3 years later, the leader calls me and says, I feel like we've lost the culture of our business because we lost the story that connects us to the people in the community. Can you help us? And it was this moment where I went, we have to get back to storytelling. We have to get back to figuring out what is the way we're going to tell your story. So when someone says, what do you sell? We don't just sell information about our services. We sell something bigger. And are you guys familiar with Duck Dynasty? Anybody? Okay. So Phil Robertson, the grandpa, the dad, kind of rough around the edges. But I'm fascinated by watching people tell different stories, especially stories differently. And my text thread with Terry a lot of the time is back and forth about, did you see this? Did you see this? Here's somebody trying a storytelling. Look at how they got people to connect. What worked about this story? What are principles that would work for others? And I noticed some principles in watching Phil Robertson tell a story. He has one specific story that he has told multiple times on multiple interviews, multiple places. And that is about, he had a problem with people stealing his fish. And the fish thieves would come, they'd find his lines, his nets, pull him up, steal his fish, go away. He caught them one day, like with the line in their hand. And he chose in that moment that I can be a person of grace or a person of vengeance. And he chose to be a person of grace and say, I will give you the fish if you need fish. And in the future, don't steal, come and see me. This is where I live. And I will give you fish. And he said an amazing thing happened in that moment is that people stopped stealing from me and they just started talking. And I've heard him tell that story now in a bunch of different situations. And the amazing thing about what he had to share was that the length of the time, the audience changed, but the core elements never did. Someone was stealing my fish. I decided to have this kind of response. Here's how they responded at an end. And I realized there's a storytelling hook here. And it comes down to this. If you can use a simple outline, it will give you the flexibility to walk into a space and know I only have 3 big ideas in that case that I need to share. And if I've got 5 minutes, I can fill 5 minutes with the details of the story. And if I've got 90 seconds, I can fill 90 seconds with the detail of the story. So he used a simple outline and he adapted the delivery based on who he was talking to and when. And he was able to do that because he knew his story well enough that, once again, I only have to have 3, maybe 4 points that I got to make. And we're going to deliver this thing easily. And then he made it his. In our case, it would be making the story ours. That we find a way to own our story in a way that it's really only ours. If you heard him tell it, if you watch Duck Dynasty, no one's going to copy that. Like, that's just the way he talks. Really simple idea. He had a simple outline. He told it simply. He made it his. He adapted it to who was in front of him. And I realized as I was watching and listening to this that, okay, that's a great way for me to think about when I walk into a meeting. There's maybe a couple stories I just have to have bullet points on, essentially. But that's great, but what makes it repeatable? And I was watching the Bertcast podcast. Anybody seen the Kreischer podcast, Bert Kreischer podcast? Does anybody know who Bert Kreischer is? Comedian? Okay. So he's got a bit called The Machine. He was interviewing Jeff Foxworthy. You guys know Foxworthy? Okay. Right. And Foxworthy, it was obvious that Bert Kreischer had a lot of respect for Jeff Foxworthy. And he was asking Jeff about, how do you tell stories well? How do you sit in a meeting like this with a note card and write one idea on a card that gives you the flexibility to tell it in 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 12 minutes as a bit? Or in the case of Foxworthy, to tell it in 2 sentences as a redneck joke. What is that process? How do you walk through that? How do you make it so simple that if I told the story to you today, you could go to the water cooler or to somebody on your staff and repeat it tomorrow and they would get the heart of it? And Foxworthy had some great insights about it. And he said, first and foremost, you have to make your story easy to share. It has to be so simple. His words were that, especially with his redneck jokes, that they were easy to retell, that anyone could go down the hall and tell it themselves. They could retell the story tomorrow. The next thing that he had to share was that every good story can be told in 1 sentence. And he said, learning to tell a story in 1 sentence made me a better writer. And the same thing made me a better storyteller, because it meant that he had to not just know what he wanted to say, but how to say it so succinctly that there was no question in how it was going to be delivered. And then the last thing that Foxworthy had to say was something he actually learned from Jay Leno. And that was the efficiency of words. He met with Leno, and Leno told him, you get up and you tell a story, you tell a bit, and there's this kind of pace to your story. And Leno said, cut everything to get to the punchline. You have got to make it as simple as possible. Get everything unnecessary out of the way. So he made his story short, he made it clear, and he told it efficiently. So those principles are something I want to walk us through right now. And I've got some handouts, and we're going to spend the next few minutes actually walking through a storytelling flywheel that I've been working on. And here's the thing. Sometimes the source, whether it's Phil from Duck Dynasty or it's Jeff Foxworthy, the source doesn't matter if we can figure out a way to apply the principle. So what I find with a lot of my clients is they come to me and they say, I need a website. I need to know how to advertise this business. I need to know how to talk about it in public. The problem is they usually come looking for a solution and trying to solve something that's not the real question. The real question is, how am I going to tell this better? How am I going to tell this so clearly? It doesn't matter what means I use, what channel I use. I'm going to tell it clearly. And the heart of it comes down to, I probably should be looking at one of these, comes down to a couple ideas. We have got to pick a dang story to tell. Here's part of the challenge. Some of us, we have so many options of what could be told, we try to tell everything. So we get into a meeting and I'm networking with someone and they don't say, they ask one question and I put in 5 things rather than the most important. So what I want to work on today is some clarity pieces around helping you find a specific story that you can tell really well. So I want you to do this. I want you to think of one story that you already tell. That I started talking about us camping. We've got those lore stories. Okay. We've got the tribal kind of stories that you always laugh about, even after you've told them and heard them 50 times. What is a story you use in your business already? What is a story that every time you tell it to someone, they're nodding, they connect with? Can you think of a story like that? Okay. I'd love you to write that story down. Write that story name, a description, something that will remind you, hey, that story I tell everybody, someone always responds to that story. There is something about it. Doesn't matter what the story is. Just think of a story. A couple things maybe to help you is pick something that's true to who you are. We talked about that idea several times this weekend. That's connected maybe to your mission or work. It doesn't necessarily have to be. Well, I'm amazed as I've started doing this more, the stories you can connect that somehow seem off in the margins, but because you are emotionally connected to it, you just share it differently and people go, oh, I've had that experience. And if you can tie it to your business, so that's what we're going to work on. Okay. That's memorable, easy to revisit. Does everybody have a story, maybe a thought? Anybody still struggling? Joey's still struggling? Great. Diana and I started talking through this last night. She's like, I got a story.
So you're saying it can be any story. It doesn't have to be related to the business?
It really could be any story. For instance, Diana, can I use you as an example? Tell just 3 sentences your story. Or shortly. Okay. So we all chuckled. I think it's hysterical, mostly because I could see myself or my brother doing that very thing to each other. We threw food at each other. My mom hated those moments, but okay. So that is a story that could be a jumping ground to all sorts of things. Is there something in your life that you go, hey, I could maybe use that story in my business somehow. I could use it in my relationships. Joey, did that help? What'd you got in one day? Wait, you did all 4 parks? Somehow I missed that. Wow.
47.
Okay. It's doable. Anybody else got a story that they wouldn't mind sharing?
2-bit bug.
Bit bug. What does that mean?
1991, a telecom company swapped the 1 and the 0 in a patch they were doing and took down the entire telecommunications network of the East Coast and West Coast.
Okay. I feel like that was Xfinity like 12 times in our area recently, but okay. Yeah.
24 hours.
Anybody else? Quick story. Caleb.
2 months before COVID happened, I moved to a new city with the desire to build a strong community around me. And then COVID happened. But
Oh.
I started building a community. I realized everybody else wanted the same thing that I wanted, belonging and community. And everybody talks about this topic, but nobody tells you how to do it.
Okay. I apologize if the handwriting gets ugly here. Okay. So everybody has one story.
Here you go.
Well, if you've got a ton, here's what I would say. Pick one to go through this exercise with, because you can do this repetitively. And in fact, that's actually a great point. So Terry and I, 3 years ago, started working on a book. And the idea was that every business leader, anytime you step up to a microphone, needs to have a story, whether it's a virtual mic, a real mic, something that makes you memorable, that when you tell it, people go, oh, Roger talks about funny toilet stories. He made allusions yesterday to Squatty Potty that half the room missed, but a couple of us were like, he just did Squatty Potty. Because those kind of things just make people, they perk people up. They make people smile, whether it is pertinent to the exact point you're trying to make in your presentation. It also helps just keep people going with you. So I would say this, you're going to need somewhere between 7 and 10 different stories at some point in your business. So find one that you could think about right now. And let's focus on it for the next few minutes. The next point is know what it proves. And here's what I mean by that. You have to know why the heck you're telling this story. Okay. Phil Robertson had a story about fish being stolen. His point was not about fish being stolen. His point was about what is my response as a human going to be? And will I meet these people's actual need? Or will I go after them as thieves? The response of them was that the community stopped stealing from him. Okay. His whole story, his whole point, what he was trying to prove was, for him, I'm going to be the bigger man. So if you think about that story, I went to Disney World and I rode all but one ride in one day. What is the big point? What is the point of throwing a sandwich at your brother other than it being hilarious?
Setting expectation. Is this where we make it go in the future?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, we're going there. Caleb, how about you? What is a core principle of that networking community that you learned in that process?
That it's way easier than people think it is to make people feel seen and heard.
Thank you. All right. So if you know what it proves, okay, it doesn't have to be, once again, specific to your business. The whole idea here is we're trying to find a way to connect with people, to create a hook that connects us to people. Okay. All right. Now I got that song in my head. Thank you all. All right. So here's the next point. You're going to distill it down. For those of you who don't know, my brand is Distill Your Story, because this is where the work happens. Okay. That so often we want to verbally vomit every detail about this story on someone when that's not really necessary. So, all right. If you were going to simplify your story into a single sentence that anyone could remember, okay, so you started with a story idea, you know what the point of the story is. If I had one sentence to share and nothing more, how could I write a synopsis about this story? The goal here is, like Foxworthy mentioned, just be efficient with your words. Figure out, how am I going to say it? All of he didn't start with, you might be a redneck if. He started with, if you've ever peed in the pool, when you weren't in the pool, you might be a redneck. That was the delivery, but you've all seen a kid pee in the pool, most likely. Or done it. Right. So it's funny, but he told the backstory on how I got there. And the backstory was like 60, 80 words, but they aren't going to hang on to that. I can't repeat 60, 80 words tomorrow, but I can repeat 2 sentences. So if you've got this story idea, Joey, did you come up with something like, how would one sentence say it? Joey, anything? Yeah. Distill it like down into one thing. Yep. Just distill it down into one big thing. How would you tell your story, Diana? I actually think you are way better. That's fair. That's fair.
I keep thinking of it as, I'm thinking of it right now as an intro. Let me tell you what beating my brother in the face with a turkey sandwich taught me about it.
There you go. Okay. All right.
A single software defect almost lost us our company.
Yes. Caleb, how about you?
I think it's tough for me because mentally I'm dabbling between like the intro of, so somebody asked me, oh, what do you do?
Yep.
Versus telling a story.
Right.
I mean, I know that they can do the same. I'm not sure.
Can you release the pressure for them to be the same?
So I had somebody on my podcast recently, and he's been a friend for years. And I have if you were at previous things, you saw me kind of present how do you do your intro story kind of idea. Essentially it's like a networking idea, but so you're memorable and it's repeatable. And he pushed back on me about my framework. He said, I think the problem is you're starting the conversation one question too late. He said, I lead with a funny intro or a funny connection that creates a hook that they can't say no to asking more questions.
I think that's the set.
Yes, that's what you just did. And so sometimes I have to think about this like, okay, well, how would I get into this story? Now, if I had done this slide presentation, my opening line was something to the effect of, how much bacon can a 12-year-old eat? Not because I'm going to talk about bacon, but because I need you to just start thinking about camping. Well, that feels weird in a workshop setting, but I know camping is a core story and a part of my story. Really, it's the family time that is. But that one story, I could go a ton of places if I know what I'm trying to prove with the story. And that's where we're going to try and get today. Ori, how about you?
Well, I was thinking more specifically about the hook
Yeah.
causes people to be more intrigued to ask more questions. And the thing that kind of keeps coming back in my mind is how flooding my bedroom with 300 gallons.
That is, yes. Okay. That is exactly what? Yes. Okay. So my buddy's intro who pushed back on with me is, I feel digital onions. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he said, well, I do digital marketing, but everybody does digital marketing. The problem is no one helps you figure out how to peel the onion in a way that makes sense in their business. I'm like, that's somebody I keep talking to. Okay. You are. But if you said that in your context, people would kind of go,
For some stuff
yeah, maybe so.
you know.
Okay. His comment to me when I asked it, he said, so you are a wine barrel for stories. And what happens in a wine barrel? It ferments the entire process. So you've gone through this whole distillation process and it goes and it sits for an allotted amount of time and essentially marinades. It becomes that product that's highly valued in the process. Like, that's solid. All right. So we maybe have a sentence sort of kind of. Okay. Yeah, please do. I would say this, how one belief made an aspiring swimmer miss the team. I'm sorry, aspiring Olympian. Yeah, sorry. How an inspiring Olympian missed the team because of one belief.
Hey,
Missed the Olympics. I would actually.
Team, because it shows that he's on the team versus on.
Right. And that's what I was gonna lean into is that for me, making the team is the goal. I know I'm going against the best in the world, and there's a chance I may not show up at my potential. But I made the team, and that means I'm in the top 0.25% in the globe. Maybe, yeah.
honestly,
No, you're good. This is the point.
I would take out the word belief completely.
Yeah.
And I would replace it with more of an actionable hook word that's in the story itself.
Mm.
And I would take that out as the actual. So I would take out belief. And there's a couple of reasons for that. So the first one would be because in this space, most people in the room will have heard limiting beliefs. They've heard the terminology around that. So the hook is going to be in the intrigue of throwing something different out. So they're going to ask the question rather than like, oh, this is about something. So I think that for you, I think that the intrigue is actually in the emotion that comes out in the action word that's in the story itself.
Because then you make people feel.
Yeah.
How I lost my chance to be on the Olympic swim team.
An emotional hook that's in the story itself. So what was an emotion, or what's the part of the story that was like almost either the lowest point that you can pull that out to get to that emotional response that leads them to, oh wait, I don't think the word belief should be part of it.
How an aspiring Olympic swimmer lost his chance on the Olympic team because of fear.
Is that limiting though to people who feel like they're just dealing with fear? Because if I don't feel like I struggle with fear, then I'm just shut off. But that doesn't apply to me. Is that narrowing it too much?
It's more, and that's one that I'd maybe want to workshop a little bit more. Only for those nuanced kind of reasons, like how are you going to connect it to the next piece? So that the next piece is we've got to tell it efficiently, which is Foxworthy talking about Jay Leno telling him, cut everything that's unnecessary. But here's the thing, is that if we can get our story down to one sentence, we can always add to it. And so most stories need at least 3 beats or 3 landing points. Okay. So once again, Phil had someone steal from him. He had a personal decision about what kind of person he was going to be and how they responded. So thinking about the story here, if you had 3 things that if you had moments to tell this story, what are the 3 most important ideas that you would need to convey in that story? Well, since that's your story is your big idea, what is it in that young man's life? What are the takeaways that are non-negotiables? They have to be part of you telling that story. He was a high competitive swimmer, high performer. He hoped to make the Olympic team, and there was one thing that stood in his way. Okay, now
Rather than hope, I'd use something along the lines of he
expected. Yeah.
making the Olympic team. And here,
Yes, especially because you said we hope, right?
everybody,
He expected to make the Olympic team. Yes. So if you told that story and those are the only 3 things, those are like, this is where I'm going to stake. These are the things I have to share. You could find a way to share that in under 2 minutes, or you could share from stage in 3 to 5, like you did. So Joey, if you were going to tell that story of you and David Dollar, what are the 3 things that you have to make sure you convey?
That I know Disney, a lot of planning.
Money.
an experience.
And you guys did that as a fundraiser, right? So here's the cool thing. In the right room, you could add info about the fundraiser. But in the wrong room, you don't even need to talk about that because your goal is to connect it back to who you are as a person. What we talked about at lunch and your business pieces. Why are you, in your case, worthy of that fee that it costs to use your services? Okay. Anybody else want to share what their 3 points would be about their story? Yes, ma'am. Okay.
For me, is it worth telling it just in one sentence?
There will be moments where one sentence is all you get. There will be moments where one of my big thoughts and realizations in this process is that there are moments when you have 15 seconds and there are moments when you have 5 minutes. But you have to know, why am I sharing this? And what are the most important things to convey in the time allotted? And part of that is reading the room. Like if you get halfway in a story and you go, I lost them, tell a different story. Okay. But what allows you to tell a different story in that moment is that you only had to remember the 3 main ideas of that story to get in and out of it. And all the details are based then on, if you realize you got the audience and they're like, yes, keep talking. But if you see people, especially after lunch, and the eyes are starting to droop and you're like, bail, like, let's get to the end point. Okay. So 3 ideas. Is that a legit story?
Right. But I probably would keep out famous names. It feels like a name drop. Although sometimes I do tell them, yeah. Oh my.
Okay. So your story's full enough people can hear. What was the name?
Well, I went over really fast, Roger. I didn't really invite you to hear it. Like I was like trying not to name drop. But
If you're going to say the name, make sure you say.
Say it with gusto.
to myself, this year, I want to go to the Academy Awards for fun. 5 days before the event, the invitation came out of nowhere. Then there I am on the red carpet the following week with Shea Whittel at Geo4 stepping on the train of my dress.
So I think one of the important, I always think about the emotion
Yes.
to everything. One of the important points I think to think about is that the 3, because we're talking about 3.
Yeah.
3 different aspects of whether it's a sentence, 3 sentences, or the story or the whatever, is that every aspect of that needs to take your audience through an emotional journey of the story so that they can picture themselves emotionally connected in that. Even though you only made 3 sentences, there was a very different emotion that was attached to each one of those sentences so that they could visualize themselves in that story.
And it's missing the emotion.
And it's missing emotion?
That's my question to you. Was it missing?
No, not at all. That it doesn't matter whether you're speaking for 5 minutes or if you're telling a story for 10 minutes or, that doesn't matter. Each one of those 3 main points has to have a very specific emotion attached to it that threads through the journey that you want to take them.
Oh,
through.
so I didn't think I was going. And then suddenly 5 days before the invitation came out of nowhere.
Right.
Okay, I got it. Goes the paper.
So think about the elements of your favorite movie or your favorite book,
Right.
or how you get emotionally invested into the story. And there's certain pieces of that that you have to remember when you're the one communicating the story. You want your audience to feel that emotional connection in the main points that you need to make so that they can picture themselves in all of that, all of the different emotions so that they can feel the point of what it is that you're saying.
Very cool. I made an edit.
Here's one good thing about doing this. Any of y'all thinking about doing social media?
Yes.
These are titles for your video.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the first thing you want to do is create the curiosity. Oh my God, I got to know what to find.
Right.
And then your thumbnail needs to tell the story without any words, because this thumbnail's the stop sign. It's going to make them stop. Right. Then when they read the title, they're like, I got to watch.
So, and thank you for that great connection, because when we can figure this out for the stories we need to be telling, not the stories we want to tell, but that we need to tell, that our clients actually need to hear, all of a sudden, these elements, like I said it in one sentence, there's my X post, there's my thread, there's my intro on a Facebook, there's the initial hook. I know I've got 3 big ideas in my LinkedIn post about this that's going to send you to the blog about it, or it's going to send you to the YouTube, or it's going to whatever, because you've gone through the process and gone, oh, I can share this short or long, but I still get to the end result.
Like, there's a lot of people on LinkedIn that have asked me about blah, blah, blah. And so like for Joey, it could be, ask me about my once in a lifetime rewrite Disney experience. So you can take an even smaller fragment.
Yes.
And turn it
into
call to
something.
action.
Okay. Does everyone have 3 beats or 3 ideas about their story?
Yes.
Okay. Did somebody say no? Okay. All right. So here's what I want you to do is I want you to think about adapting the delivery. Okay. We just started to hint at this, but most everyone in the room was on stage at some point this week. There's a couple, 3 of us who weren't, but the reality is these stories, for them to work best for us, they've got to work in multiple ways. And so I would love to have you think about, and you can write it if you want, you can outline it. Think about, if I was going to tell this story to a customer, and those are my 3 big ideas, what are the additional points that I'd want to make sure I conveyed around this story to a customer? How could I connect this story to a customer so they go, Lori said it, emotionally go, yes, this is my guy. They read Joey's and they go, I need to call him. I need to fill out that crazy form online. I need to make his SEO work for it. So if you were going to tell this story to a customer, either outline it in bullet form or scribble it down really quick, how would you think about it? I'll give you a couple minutes because we're doing good on time. How we doing? Got some rough ideas? Yeah, a couple more minutes. We'll see people write. Okay. Are we all right? We need some more time. So, same story. If you were going to share it with a team member so that they understood it and had buy-in, how would you tweak that a little bit? What would you change, remove? How would you share it a little differently? Like a team member, like you've got a staff member, you've got someone who you're not just trying to tell the story, like you need them to buy into the principle, not just so it connects emotionally with them, but like so they go, I understand why that's an important principle to our business. I understand why you want it done that way, why that value is important in our business. Does that help?
Yeah, I was trying to think of the.
Yeah. More just really for a team, it comes down to buy-in. And the goal here is just for us to begin to think, same story, I'm just adapting it, just figuring out in this context, how can I reuse this sucker so I don't have to keep starting over again all the time? Because one story told 50 times is a whole lot better than 50 stories told once. Joey and Caleb, you guys good? Okay. Sorry. I know we're pushing. Okay. So the last one, if you were going to share it in social, how would you share it? And this is the one that Roger already alluded to. Like, I'm going to share this almost as a micro story. It maybe those 3 points are the only points I make. Maybe there's another something, but how would I make sure that I shared it in a way that's still connected with the reader enough that they went, I want to click that link. There's a little more space on the back of that page. So the last point in this idea, sorry, I'm not going to, is did you commit to actually repeat this crazy story? I can't tell you how many times I work with a client and we figure out, here's what the messaging is going to be. And the following week I go, what happened to the messaging? Like, we just worked on this. It's really painful to go through the process to figure out how can we communicate with clarity and in a way that people will remember us. So when we do the work, it's important we actually commit to make sure we're going to share the word. So my challenge to you would be, and feel free to sign this if you want, but think about this. How are 3 ways that I could share this story in the next 7 days? There's some ideas there of places you might share it. But begin to think about, how on earth could I get this information out? If it's important enough that I spent half an hour working through it, how can I make sure that was time well spent connecting people to my story of my business, of me personally and as an individual? So think of some ways you might do it. And if you're the kind of person who it helps to sign the crazy thing. So I'm going to commit to actually figuring out a way to share this crazy thing. Because at the end of the day, our business is our livelihood, but it's a lot more than that. And we've got a story that people will connect to. And when they do, we want them to be emotionally connected to us, as Lori said a couple of times. We want them to know, hey, they're the answer, but they're not just the answer to my problem. They actually seem like a kind of person I'd want to learn more about. It's why our family, at least our family, keeps telling the same crazy stories over and over and over. We laugh at the same lines every time, not because the stories change, but because they mean something to us. And if the story means something in your business and is worthy of being shared, make sure you, all right? Thank you all. Yes. As an oversharer, I can tell you that, and my wife will tell you that she's like, that one of the most painful things for me is to walk through a process like this, because in my ADHD mind, I don't know if I share the detail, and I will come back and share the same detail again. And I'll be like, oh, I shared that 3 times, especially if I go back and listen to the recording. So yeah, but it is, and you get faster at this. You get better at doing it when you start thinking about, Cherie said, I've got multiple stories. Okay, well, so go through the process with another story, so.
Thank you.
Thank you all. This has been another episode of Brand on the Rocks. I hope you found today's workshop helpful. If there were some things that you would like to work through in your business, check out the links in the show notes. But also feel free to reach out to me, because I would love to work with you or your entire business to help you begin to figure out how to share your story better, how to distill it down into ways that anyone can understand quickly and that your ideal customer responds to. And until next time, stop drowning in the noise and start delivering and serving up clarity in your business.